You're listening to the Late Night Football Show with your host, Rohit Singh. That's me. On this show, we talk about some of the most seriously silly topics from the world of football for your entertainment and enjoyment. Please remember that the show is BYOL. Bring your own laughs, since we don't have the budget for a studio audience. Happy listening. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Late Night Football. It's been an interesting week or a day actually, interesting day of games today, and we're trying to smile. We're all trying to smile, but we're not actually. I think we're sad on the inside or angry on the inside. Not sure what's going on, but welcome Ayush to the show back again under different circumstances. But welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, and welcome back, Akash. We had you here on Friday, and I have you back again. Thanks so much for joining as well.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack, and so halfway through, I think about 2 hours ago, I thought we'll do the Liverpool game first because that'll be easy, straightforward. We'll talk about blah 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 how Liverpool are going to walk the league, all of that, and then we'll talk about Manchester United. But that obviously didn't happen. So I think we'll start with Manchester United because that game happened first, and there's a lot to unpack. So we'll start with Manchester United. And I don't know whether it's because of the Liverpool game or because of the fact that it's been a couple of hours, but I can now take a step back. I can be a little bit calm. I can be a bit calmer. I can talk about this, but I was fuming. But let's start with the team selection. Akash, do you think, obviously, whatever happened in the game, do you think at the start when you saw that team sheet, did you think that was the right team that was put out?
I think it was the right team. I mean, I wasn't expecting to see Bai again because it will be a bit heavy on his fitness because he has been injured for a while now. So I was happy with him in the first name in the sheet. So, and coming to Pogba, I expected him to start no matter how poor his performance was and how good Van de Beek was midweek. So yeah, I think it was the right team to go with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was interesting though. I mean, Ayush, we talked about penalties in our preview show. We keep talking about it. First minute couldn't have scripted it better, right? First minute, United get a penalty. Was it a legit penalty according to you?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it was checked by VAR also, so yeah, it was a penalty.
Yeah.
But, the contact was not that great, but it was a penalty.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you think that early goal kind of affected United a little bit because they kind of, sometimes what happens when you get early goals is teams can be taken aback because you've already gone back, but sometimes it can also create that false sense of security where you think, okay, we've got that early goal, we can relax a little bit, whereas you're not on it at the start. Do you think that happened to United when they got that first goal where they thought, okay, they were kind of like a little bit, they got ahead of themselves a little bit?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it gave a shot in the arms to Tottenham to attack.
Mhm.
But you are most vulnerable when you concede or score. So they took that, and credit goes to them. They took their chances. And United were definitely very open. I mean, the defending from Maguire was obviously for everyone to see. It was too bad.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And I think before we get into that, I know the tendency is to rant. I know the tendency is to be angry, but I think I want, at least my hope is to be as constructive as possible in what we talk about. So we are going to get into the negative stuff now, at least from a United point of view. Starting with that first goal, I mean, where do you begin? Okay, so Maguire heads it. He heads it straight at Bailly, I think it was. Goes up. He goes for a second header that he goes behind. So he tries to head it back to De Gea for whatever reason. And then that doesn't work. So then Shaw is trying to clear it. He tackles Shaw. Maguire tackles Shaw. And then after all of that, he just lets it go. It just goes inside. I mean, Akash, did he panic? Was there a sense of panic in him when he saw this whole thing unfolding in front of him, or do you think it was just a bad decision? Like, I mean, where exactly? Like, what happened there?
See, of course, it was a moment of panic because we scored like a minute back, and after that, Spurs have a counter attack, and Maguire. First of all, Harry Maguire was not supposed to be in that position, I believe. Bai should be the one dealing with that, and Wan-Bissaka should be a bit narrower when the ball is inside the box. So I don't know what Maguire was trying to do with the initial header. The second header, I can understand he's trying to get the ball to David De Gea. So the first one, I think it was a ridiculous mistake. I don't know if he was getting the ball towards the corner line or maybe trying to clear it that way. So yeah, I mean, but you have also seen in the previous games and even in the last season we defended okay. I'm not saying we defended bad, but it was decent. We conceded a lot less goals. But the thing is, Harry Maguire has not looked assured whenever he has played. I mean, when he has the ball, he tends to get a bit clueless. Now let's take an example of Chris Smalling. So whenever he used to play, the best he can do is to clear the ball, which is a basic for a defender. Okay, so in that moment, what I need from Harry Maguire initially is to get the ball out of the danger area, and after that he can use his passing abilities and whatever heading he tried. I mean, I'm not sure what that was. So I believe Harry Maguire was totally at fault for that goal.
Yeah. Let's talk about the second goal, Ayush. Harry Maguire again makes the tackle. Fair enough. It's in a harmless area, and then he sort of just leaves Kane to make that pass, and then goes to Son. I mean, where do you see? Do you think it was again? Was it like he was a little bit unsettled, or was it the fact that there's no justification for these goals, right? It's clear what was going on, but I mean, where does it? I mean, what exactly could have been done differently? I mean, in that situation.
Really, the defense was not shielded properly, I think. I mean, once you concede, the thing you have to do is to get back and become more narrower, more compact, and defend as a team. I mean, the team there were so much spaces. I mean, someone could run 15 yards with the ball, and no one was there to make a tackle. The fullbacks were non-existent. So I mean, it's easy to blame Maguire, but when Son is running at full tilt towards you, I mean, you can't do much about it. I mean, you can either pull him down and get a red card or do something silly.
Yeah,
or just look at it.
It's that pass from Kane. That's pretty much the thing that either Maguire or Van Bissaka. Van Bissaka tried, put a foot in, but that was too late. Maguire just stood there waiting. Basically, I think he thought that the ref was going to talk to him or something. Kane just put it down and went ahead.
Yeah.
It's sad to see. And then of course, let's talk about the red card now, because that I think up to that point, leaving everything aside, the red card. What do you think? Was it a red card? Was I guess A, was it a red card for Martial, and B, should it have been a red card for Lamela?
Yes, I think, it was pathetic performance on Lamela. I mean, it's not expected from him, and not at least after VAR is also there. I mean, how could he even attempt such a faking of? But there was a hand mistake from Martial, but it was not worthy of a red card. Or there should be a yellow card for both the parties. So it was definitely unfair for United, and the match was poised to be a thriller, but it just took out the sting out of United and made things much easier for the Spurs also.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was I thought it wasn't a red card, but I can see why it was given. I thought Lamela should have been sent off if Martial is going to be sent off, because he put that elbow in. But Akash, the one thing that surprises me is, and this is something that I noticed, is that Jose has been on the offensive with the referees, and Man United has been subtly making those arguments, right, that they get all decisions. Did that play a part in that sort of subtle? I call it bullying, because I think that's what he was trying to do. But do you think that played a part in that in this incident where they thought, okay, we've got to, this is what it's subconsciously plays a part, doesn't it?
I think it's possible. We have seen in the last week that both Ole and Mourinho were trying to play mind games, and as Ole was complaining about the penalties and stuff which United have been given in recent times. But also, I think it was a bit smart from Tottenham and Lamela. I'm pretty sure that this was discussed in the dressing room before the game. You have seen in the documentary, I think for last year, how Mourinho wants his players to be that word I'm not saying right now, but yeah, he wants to be the bad guy. He wants the players to behave in a certain way that they are not portrayed as the good guys who are soft. So I think he got it right here. And of course, it was not a red card. Lamela easily managed to con the referee. And at the most, it was a yellow card to both players because, I mean, there was nothing in it. I mean, it was just a show. I mean, it happens in each and every set piece you take. So, I mean, the ref probably made a big deal out of it, especially after Lamela got down. So, yeah, I mean, but I don't think this decision changed the course of the game entirely. Yeah, you can say a 6-1 is a bit of exaggeration considering we played with 10 men, but I think we were struggling and we deserved to lose.
Yeah, I don't think the result would have changed. I said it at the start, at the preview itself. I did think United were going to win the game, and you know that. I mean, but actually, that brings me to another point that I want to ask though. But I didn't think the result was going to change, but it completely killed it in some ways, and we'll talk about that. But before that, Akash, why is Son playing? Wasn't Son injured? Isn't that what they were saying, that Son was injured before the game? I'm saying, how come he started that game? I think Jose lied. I think he lied. I don't think the injury was serious. I think he just lied, and he basically pull that trick out of the hat. I don't know, but I mean, it seems that way, doesn't it? That he played.
I moved him for my fantasy Premier League team. Just because.
I lost that on points there, didn't you?
No, but I was trying to tell you in the podcast we did with Shashi that Son is not necessarily out.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was in the news that he'll be out for a few weeks, as Jose even said that he is temporarily out. But yeah, again.
No, I remember he was doubtful.
Classic Jose.
Yeah, I remember you saying that he might play, he might not play. And I remember saying if he plays, we're done. But the way that he said it was like it's going to be a few weeks, so he was not going to play. But I think he just lied about it. I think he's done that before in the past where he said somebody's not going to play and then they play.
Yes, but I think Ole was ready. I mean, he definitely knew that Son was going to be a part of it. He even said post-match. I don't know if he meant that, but yeah, I mean.
Yeah, but no.
I think even without Son, it will be difficult for us.
Yeah, but now let's get into the post red card, because I think this is where the entire thing came apart. And what I noticed in the players, and I noticed this as soon as there was not much of protest, he goes off. It almost seems like United were like, okay, we're done at this point. Like this is the game over for us. And it's disheartening to see. Fair enough, you're down to 10 men. It's a silly red card. It's a wrong decision. Everybody sees that the ref is bad, whatever. But for the players to give up at that point, because it's only 30 minutes. Right? If it's 70 minutes, fair enough, you can understand, okay, it's not your day. But at 30 minutes for the players to just say, giving up, it was saddening to see. It was just like, every goal goes in. And the thing is, what I noticed, it's you could see the hurt in Ole's eyes, but the players were like, it's fine. It's whatever. And that's hard to see, isn't it? When you watch that.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you can see the mentality of the players at that point of time. These players have to be strong. So even if you lose a game by, let's say, 2 goals or 3 goals, you just don't give up at a club like Man United. And if there were fans in the stadium, I mean, it would be ridiculous. I mean, for them, they would be, like game week of this season. Yeah, I can understand that we did not had a preseason. But the basics of the game should be acknowledged, and I think it starts with Ole. He should have done a better job in this position.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like I mean, we've had this conversation. We're having this conversation even while the game is going on. I honestly, I mean, and I used to let's bring you into this because as a rival fan, you probably see it. How much do you think was Ole to blame for this game? Just the other baseline. What do you think? How much do you think lies on the players? How much lies on the manager?
After the red card, I mean, because Spurs is a quality team with the quality strikers and wingers like Son and Kane, so they can definitely hurt you. So Ole hasn't got the arsenal and to counter this such kind of situation. I mean, the position-based teams like Barca or City, even with 10 players, they managed to keep the possession properly and keep the opposition out of their own area. But Man United clearly don't have those kind of players who can keep the ball. I mean, Pogba is very poor in that sense. And Fred also. And these guys, I mean, they are just not that quality. And today they even lacked a desire. I mean, they just gave up, like you said. So, and Ole couldn't do much about it. So I mean, he could have brought anyone and the result would have been similar.
Yeah.
So not much blame on Ole. I mean, I see because also my team also has suffered today, so I can't
Well, and
blame on the
there are similarities in how the teams play today, and there are differences, and we will touch on that, and we're going to come to Liverpool, but I do want to go in a little bit on Ole and then some individual performances, and then we'll come to Liverpool. The first thing that I feel is, I know a lot of people will say that he was out of his depth or he made mistakes, and he made mistakes in this game. Absolutely, I think Donny van de Beek should have started. I don't think Pogba should have started this game, irrespective of how he played. He shouldn't have started, but he did. I can kind of understand that. Fair enough. I was surprised when at halftime he made substitutions. He didn't bring on Donny. I don't think it was the wrong idea to take off Bruno and Matic, because I think he just wanted to rest Bruno, which is totally fine. I mean, the game's gone, and Matic is too slow at that point to play that. So I get it, but I think Donny should have come in. I definitely think that should have happened. But I don't. And I think, and there was other mistakes as well. But I don't think you can account for individual errors, because I think all the 6 goals were all individual errors. There was at no point did I feel like Tottenham had got those goals because they played some really good passes or they were like tearing them apart. It wasn't happening. It was just individual errors which keep happening. And a manager really can't do much, at that point when there are individual errors. But that's just my take on it. And I understand people have different opinions. I do feel anyway, and I said this as well, it goes back to the squad depth. I think even if Ole wants to make changes, who is he going to bring on? Like, I mean, why does Paul Pogba need to perform better at 2-1 down? Why does he need to care when he knows he's still going to play the next game if he's not going to be dropped? Why does Harry Maguire need to worry? Because he knows who's coming next. It's Victor Lindelof, right? He's bad too. Like, I mean, okay, fair enough. Victor Lindelof will come for a game. He'll probably perform bad. He'll go out. I mean, and even if somehow they play well, they know Eric Bailly is going to get injured in 2 or 3 weeks. So then he's going to come back again. So where's, I mean, and that's where we talk about, that's where it goes to the board, right? I mean, where is the depth? Where is that depth that the manager needs to say, hey, listen, if you're not going to perform, I'm going to have to drop you because I've got this guy who's doing well. He tried the other way where he said, I think in the press conference, he said that I've got a very good team. They're all playing well. And he tried to use that. But that's the only option he has, right? I mean, he cannot go and say, well, I've got these other players waiting to come in. He doesn't have that. And that, I think, is where I believe that's where the focus needs to be on the recruitment side of things. But Akash, what do you think?
See, as far as the recruitment is concerned, I do feel a bit sorry for Solskjaer because the business is yet to be done and we are on the deadline there as we speak. Mm-hmm. And what I think is Ole is a bit scared to drop some players, like including Pogba and Harry Maguire. Now, obviously, Harry Maguire was bought for 80 million and it is his signing. So if he drops him, there will be a lot of questions asked, not only by the fans, but also by the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So, another thing is we don't have enough quality that we all can agree upon. Yeah. And I also believe that we are selling our best centre back, that is Chris Smalling. And it is embarrassing to say that. I mean, we have invested 150 million on 3 centre backs, like by Lindelof and Harry Maguire, and Smalling can do a better job among these 3. Yeah. So again, we are selling Smalling. Yeah, sorry. So we are selling him and we are not replacing him with any person. So I think that's a worry because that should have been a priority ahead of a left back. But again, look, it was a Luke Shaw disaster class. I mean, I don't know if this was scripted or something because Alex Telles' deal was agreed and Luke Shaw was like, I don't give a damn about this game now. So I don't know what's going on with him.
I didn't think he was that bad. I think in the second half, basically, Ole played Rashford as a striker. So he didn't have any protection on the left side. He was basically the left back, left wing back, left midfield, all of that. So I'll give him a pass for that one. I don't think he was that bad. But I understand where it's going. With regards to Alex Telles, I think that deal is now done. It's going to happen. We know that. And Edinson Cavani is going to come as well. And I will talk about what the permutations and combinations are, but I understand your point but that's again competition, right? Now Luke Shaw knows that there's somebody behind him who can take his place. Otherwise, it's Brandon Williams who's a right-footed left back, and isn't that good? We're going to talk about individual performances now because I know we need to get into this. So Ayush, I'll start with you, and we'll start with Paul Pogba. Because I mean, it's 4 years now, and he's had 2 good performances in 4 years. One of those not for Manchester United. He had that in the World Cup final, which everybody talks about, and then that Manchester City game. 1 good game in 4 years. I mean, I've been pretty public about this. I don't think Paul Pogba is world class. I think he's a decent player who needs too many things around him, too many factors to go his way to put in a good performance. But what do you think? What do you think of Paul Pogba now? Is it time? I mean, I think it's time. I think it's high time we give up. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think Paul Pogba's situation is pretty similar to what Mesut Ozil is facing in Arsenal. It's just that Arsenal have realized it and they have probably accepted the fate that he's not the same player anymore. And but United are still trying to salvage something out of Pogba, which is not there. I mean, he's suitable for Syria, where the pace is slow and the players are not that physical. But in EPL, I mean, the players don't give any moment of rest, and they are on to you in a second. And he doesn't. You can't just play like Berbatov and just flick around and show your tricks and flicks and here and there. I hardly see any 30-yard goals also from him, which we used to see during his Juve days. So I think he's done and probably should be sold now.
Berbatov actually was class on his day, though. But
Yeah,
I understand the dig, but I think Akash, a lot of people said that he shouldn't have played 90 minutes today. I think it was a good decision to let him play 90 minutes because and again, I don't know if this is true. This is just my theory, but I think Ole probably told him, look, I'm going to give you another 45 minutes, but this base because I want to see what you can do. And if you cannot do it now, then I think it's time for you to sort of accept a bench role going forward. That was my interpretation of why he let him play 90 minutes. But what do you think? Do you think do you agree that it's the end of the road? Like it's sort of time for him to be dropped, or do you think it's that there's still time to change it?
We have been talking about Pogba since a couple of years now, like how gifted he is, but all he has shown is glimpses.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have a competitor on the bench, and we bought him this season for 35 million pounds, and I think he deserves to start because if you not give him a chance to play the big games, the actual games which we need points in, then how would you judge a transfer? Like a player of caliber of Van de Beek should be in the starting 11. I mean, so I do believe that Pogba. Sorry,
or at least be given a genuine chance to break in.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think Van de Beek should be in the starting 11 alongside Bruno, and I don't know what to do about the DM position where Matic plays. I think McTominay and him can rotate, and with Fred in, I think they can try to get a mixture of that, as we did at the end of the last season, where Bruno, Fred, and McTominay were linking up quite well against Man City. Also, I believe.
No, Man City, it was Matic, but I understand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's time to drop Pogba, and you also have to consider that after this season he has 1 year left on his contract. So you have to make a decision whether to give him a contract or to sell him. So even if we sell him for like 30-40 million, I think it's still good because we are letting off decent amount of wages, and I think it's nonsense to pay him anything about 250,000, which he's already earning, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I said is I think it's high time we try Donny and McTominay in the middle because I feel that Pogba and Matic works. Pogba and McTominay doesn't work because McTominay is not a CDM. So he's not going to do the sitting role, which is what Pogba needs someone to do, that sitting role. But I think McTominay, and Donny can probably offer more in attack, more than Matic and Pogba are offering at the moment. And they might be able to cover defensively. Both of them are pretty good to cover defensively. So maybe that's an option. Let's talk about Harry Maguire. Absolutely dismal performance. I mean, I would say drop him. I would say let's drop him for the next game, but you're only bringing in Lindelof. Lindelof is not that much better, but maybe it's a statement thing. You drop him because like just to show that he can't take his place for granted. But you'd probably drop him, wouldn't you, for the next game?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically how there was pressure on Louis van Gaal to drop Rooney, a couple of 3 years back or something. So I think this is the case. I believe his price tag is the only thing which is keeping him in the starting 11. And Ole has publicly said that he will be the captain of United no matter what. So first of all, I don't think he is the captain material. He is not a leader. I mean, there are players who come into the team and can definitely be captain straight away. As Patrice Evra said in his Sky interview today, that he cannot imagine Maguire being a captain. It is his first year and he is too soft. So I don't know what he's trying to do there. So we need a leader on the field. We have desired this since a while. I think Rooney was the last one who was there on the pitch. So I think he has to sort this. Ole has to sort this thing out. I mean, even if you drop Harry Maguire, as you said, there are no quality players which we can put in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you have to try things because you can clearly see it's not working out. And unless you sort those things, it will keep on not working out. So either you buy better players or you alter some formation or the players. I mean,
Yeah.
change your backline.
Yeah, and I'll talk about altering formation in a second. But before that, I have one more player to talk about. Ayush Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He's had 3 months now, I think, of poor performances. He was pretty good before that, and he kept Sterling quiet for 2 games, and we all talked about that. But is there there's something wrong? There's something not working for him, is there? I mean, I cannot put my finger on it. Maybe it's the fact that he has to do like he's basically been told now to do a lot more attacking, and he's not able to do both. I don't know what it is, but there's something wrong, isn't there, with him?
Yeah, definitely looks like a tactical reason behind his poor performances of Italy. Because before that, defensively at least, nobody could point a finger on him. He was definitely leagues ahead of Trent and other options. But now he's struggling defensively also. And definitely the midfield, there's no shielding, and he's probably signed more attacking duties also from Ole, so he's struggling with both those. And yeah, you are right.
It looks like I think he just like he doesn't know what to do. He's not used to going forward, so he's trying to change that. But and trying to go forward, he's I think struggling to get back in time. So he's often caught centrally because that he's trying to cover the least ground. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. I think both Wan-Bissaka and Maguire. I think there is an issue with Maguire. I think Maguire has been unfairly thought of as this Van Dijk signing that United keep trying to copy and trying to get Van Dijk and they keep trying to make him that person where he's not. He's clearly not that person. But there is issues there. Talking of formations, I think one of the things we talked about is Alex Telles coming. At this moment in time, there's no indication of Jadon Sancho coming. And I am now inclined to start thinking that deal is probably not going to happen. Because if you're Jadon Sancho and you watch that game, you're going to be thinking, why would I even want to go there in the first place? But I don't think that deal is going to happen. But I think the signing of Alex Telles might be a back five. I think that it might work where you don't have a right winger, so you might as well play a 3-5-2 with Rashford and Martial up front. And you put Luke Shaw as a left centre back, and then you get a little bit of pace around Maguire, because we do have lots of centre backs right now, like 6-7 of them. So you might as well change it to 3 centre backs, right? And you bring a bit of pace, and then Telles plays as a left wing back. I mean, I can't. I mean, there are worse ideas than that, but worth a try.
See, it's possible, but again, you have to fill the void on the right hand side. I mean, I don't see Wan-Bissaka playing a great role in the wing back side. Brandon Williams can play; he has the pace, but I'm not sure about his crossing. Like
well, he's a right-footed right back. So
yeah, he is a right-footed. Yeah, I agree on that. But when you have to play a 3 at the back and playing with 2 wing backs, you wouldn't have loaned Diego Dallo. I mean, I think that's his best position.
Yeah.
Even though he hasn't fulfilled his potential, or I mean, we have seen some glimpses and all. His crossing is pretty decent, but I mean, it's a right move to loan him. But then again, if you're changing formation, then if you're loaning him, then I don't think it's good.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. So I think the formation might not change. We will stick with the 4 at the back, and the difference is a lot of teams use their fullbacks as to get the balls in. I mean, we have seen from our fullbacks that we cannot cross a ball. I mean, you have clearly seen that, and I think with Cavani coming in, that's an option right now. So I am hoping big things from Telles, because of his numbers, you can see the numbers, like he has 20 goal contributions in a year or something. So it's a good addition. He's at the peak of his career, so I hope there is some advantage to that current side which we have.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just wait and watch. I think lots of reasons why this deal is happening that I believe so. I think it's because the board is too stingy to pay £50 million for a defender. So, we'll pay 15 million euros for a left back. Why not? Because that's how it goes. But there's certainly an interesting 24 hours ahead for Manchester United as far as the transfer window is concerned. And we'll keep an eye on that. We will have a transfer window show for you, by the way, tomorrow. So please stay tuned for that. Please remember to like and subscribe to this channel so you can get notifications for that when that video drops. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. We just reached 90 subscribers as well. So it'd be nice to get to 100 if we can by the end of next week. So help us get to that goal. So let's talk about the other game now. Let's talk about Liverpool. Because after everything that you saw at United and like being all of that, all of that negativity that you've got, anger, and then you watch Liverpool and you think, I'm in Canada, so I was thinking, did I just do some marijuana here because that's legal here, right? Weed is legal. Did I just smoke? What am I smoking? 6-7. But the first time this happened that both United and Liverpool have conceded 6 goals on the same day, or 6+ goals on the same day. Let's start with Liverpool. Let's talk about. I mean, yeah, Ayush. Yeah, let's get initial thoughts on this because I have a few thoughts on this. But let me. What did you think watching that game?
It was definitely a free performance. I mean, it's hard to digest it still. I mean, I'm still processing how could we concede 7 goals. I mean, this is a team which was winning everything and not too long ago, and now all of a sudden we are conceding 7 goals. But the one thing that was sticking out was that back line. I mean, that high line. I mean, ever since we have seen Bayern play that high line and win that UCL, I mean, I don't know what has got into Klopp and Liverpool. I mean, they are also trying to like copy that high line and win matches. But clearly, one day it was supposed to falter, and today was the day. I mean, Aston Villa, credit to them, they just demolished us and they took full advantage of that high line and Grealish and the co were just Watkins were totally in their mood and on top of that, when you get 3 deflected goals, I mean, you just know it is not a day.
Was it 3? I thought it was 2. Those 3 deflected goals.
Yeah, 3.
Goals. Okay, wow, those 3 of them. Yeah, I mean, Akash, I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to get this high line thing now. Liverpool have been playing this high risk football, percentage football, and I think it's almost similar to last week's game between Leicester and City, because that's exactly what, I mean, the only difference is City probably had were playing a bit more behind, but it's that same thing, right? That ball over the top that we've seen so often. That's all you need to do to break it. And I think Liverpool just maybe didn't expect it. Maybe they thought they could counter it, but they just had no answer to it, did they? Like that whole ball over the top, the ball through, it just works, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you have seen teams playing high line, like, you know, last season Bayern were playing a high line and they got successful. So I think Liverpool don't have a solid DM. Like you can say Fabinho and, you know, alongside with him, you can, you know, protect the back four. So, but Trent and Robertson are meant to be attacking fullbacks. So you can see what the plan was for Aston Villa to, you know, hit on counters. And with the signings they have made, I think it was a phenomenal game from them. And Jack Grealish was at the heart of it. I think United missed a trick to sign him, not to sign him. So, and their record scorer obviously getting a hat trick.
Yeah. Well, he did play as a left winger in this game, though. So we have plenty of those.
Yeah.
United have plenty of those. They don't need a left winger. But I do understand where you're coming from. Jack Grealish is definitely a special player. I think he should now be number 1. I think he should be on the team sheet for England now. I don't
absolutely
think doubts that he shouldn't be starting for England. He should be starting for England. And talk England, we'll talk about that as well in a second about where England are going. I mean, Ayush, I need to ask you this. For the second goal, I didn't. The first goal was an error. I think that's quite understandable. That second goal, though, it was Van Dijk was caught a bit out of position because he went up front and then he stayed front. He didn't come back in time. Then he finally comes back and he's getting caught out of position. It's happening quite often. He was also the one with the deflection for that. I think it was the 4th goal or the 3rd goal. I can't remember, one of those goals. I think it was. I can't remember. One of those was a deflection. I think it was the 3rd goal. But it's happening quite often with him now, isn't it? That he's trying to make these little errors in his game that are creeping in. I don't know if it's whether teams have figured him out or whether he's a little bit lax. I mean, you know, because he had these issues, having these issues. And is it a worry at this point?
Definitely, it's a worry because he is the most experienced defender right now. I mean, he's the one who leads the back, and he is the one who creates that high line, maintains that high line. But you can see Gomez is roaming around here and there. I mean, he was the one who was playing Watkins onside on many occasions, and Barkley was having a field day against him, and so you expect Van Dijk to protect when Gomez is having a bad day, but there he is on the other side of the pitch, so he can't affect he's totally out of the picture now. So one can say he's not to be blamed in some sense, but he should dash back definitely, and Fabinho should also take his place. I mean, these are just simple tactical. If you are trying to play such a high line, you should be aware of if it backfires. So you should have a plan B of how to mitigate such situation. But today it was shown that we are still lacking in that. I mean, I don't know if we will move forward with this high line thing or get back to the original, play deeper and just play it safe. I mean, we have such a goal threat. I don't know why we are trying to play such a high intensity game. I mean, we can just ease the game and so yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
Just,
I mean, it's one thing to play a Highland, but then even within that Highland, if you're one of your center halves decide that I want to be a striker, then that it's going to create more problems because then it affects the whole balance. But Akash, talking about the goalkeeper, this Alisson now, there's no doubt he's the best goalkeeper in the world. I mean, I'd say in the world, I think he's the best goalkeeper in the world right now. Maybe Neuer, you could make an argument for Neuer, maybe one of those two, but definitely one of the top two. But he seems to get a lot of injuries, right? For a goalkeeper, he seems to be injured a lot. Like, I mean, this is what, like this 10th or 9th or 10th Premier League game that he's missed in the last year or so. It is a concern, isn't it, that even though he's a good goalkeeper, you miss someone for that chunk of games. And apparently he's not going to be back after the international break either. That he could be out.
Yeah. So first of all, I think he is very crucial to Liverpool, and even last season when they won the league, he was, when he's playing in goal, the defenders have that confidence that even if they make a mistake, there is Alisson who will protect them. So I think that was the case today. So Adrian, we have seen, I mean, he is a decent keeper, but he deserves to play for a mid-table team, not Liverpool, not even as a backup. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, that's the reality, because he has been making mistakes of late. I have seen the Twitter outrages on the backup keepers of Liverpool. You can see what happened with Karius and Mignolet even, and now it's Adrian. So I think this is a trend going on. So I think they should definitely invest in a better goalkeeper. So as you can see with United, they had Romero, so it wasn't that big of a worry because he still is an assured keeper. So I think Liverpool should improve on that case. And I think what happened with the defending with Liverpool is, Van Dijk is, in the situation like 1v1, he is a good defender, but I don't think he expected Aston Villa to play as they did today. Like they got the ball in the center with Grealish or McGinn, and, they tried to like lob it on the flanks with Watkins creating a space. So this was something new for them, I believe. I'm not sure if they will be playing highline in the future, like against these teams, the ones who rely on the counter attack. And the concern was that if they lose the ball in the center of the area, then obviously it's trouble. And with Adrian in goal, you can say that 1 out of 2 times it will be a goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point about getting a better goalkeeper, but how many better goalkeepers would want to be number 2 at a club, even if it's Liverpool? I'm not sure about that, but I mean, yeah, it's one of those games. I think, and then there were 3. I think the scoreline is a bit flattering because there were 3 deflections, and I think at least 2 of those probably would have been saved if they hadn't been deflected, or might have been going off target.
Well, they could have scored more. Even Ross Barkley, Ross
sure.
Barkley is a phenomenal signing, by the way.
I'm sorry, who?
Ross Barkley, on loan. Well, I think he's a very good signing.
Well, if you can make Ross Barkley look like a world class, and I think that there's something wrong with the team. I think it was a bad day in the office. I think that's something. But Ayush, one final thing I want to touch on for this specific, and then I want to get into a little bit of a discussion on other things. But coronavirus. I mean, obviously we know Liverpool were missing Mane. They were missing Thiago. I think Thiago could have made a big difference in this game. They also missing Jordan Henderson, which I think they might start to see why he's crucial to the team. But do you think coronavirus has affected them a little bit, not just in terms of the fact that they were missing players, but also not having fans in the stadium? Because I was watching the game. I normally watch with the fake crowd noise, but this one I was watching without the fake crowd noise. It does feel a little bit flat, right? It feels like there's no atmosphere. And I think Liverpool thrive off of that atmosphere. And they weren't at it, right? I mean,
since the restart of the league from last season, also we have seen there's a drop in the results and in the performances. And definitely, fans make a big difference for every club, not just Liverpool, but especially Liverpool. Yes, definitely, because Klopp also gets those high fives and all those. So they feed off the crowd. Klopp instigates the crowd to create the noise and atmosphere. So once they have, because the players on the pitch, they cannot cheer themselves up. I mean, they have to perform. Also, they have to concentrate on the game. I mean, Van Dijk can shout as much as he wants. Klopp can shout, but they hardly listen to that. But the crowd, when they are chanting, it definitely gives you a kick. So yeah. I mean, Adrian could have boosted if the fans were there. And he definitely dwelt on the mistakes a lot, and there was a vast difference between performance of Martinez on the other side and Adrian.
Well, about Martinez, I thought Chelsea should have gone for him instead of, that they should have just bought him. They need a goalkeeper. I think they could have done much worse than buying him, but maybe Mendy is fine as well. But quickly, Akash, we'll talk now about the stuff that about this defensive, because both teams had poor, shocking defensive performances. But and we talk about lack of preseason, lack of training time. Defensive organization is something you need to put time towards. You need that time on the training pitch. Is it possible that the short preseason has somehow affected, and this is also goes for City, Manchester City as well, and even you could even make a case for Chelsea as well, and all of these teams were involved in Europe. Well, not Liverpool, but at least the three. There's been less lack of preparation time. Is that affecting these teams when it comes to defensive organization, because they're not having that time on the training pitch to do
it? It can, but then again, you cannot solely blame on lack of preseason, because what is happening right now with our defensive organization is not normal. I mean, these are professionals and you expect them to, at least stick to the basics, which we are not doing right now. You can see all the players are out of their position. I mean, they don't really have a clue where they're supposed to play. So United as a unit, and including Ole and the players itself, they have to regroup and, formulate a plan to resolve this issue, because last season, a defensive shape was good, I believe, and it should have stayed that way because our back four hasn't changed. I mean, it has basically remained the same. So the communication is there. I mean, it should be there, but I don't know what's going on. There has to be something. So I'm actually clueless about the situation right now as to why we are playing so poor.
I'm almost thinking, and this is not related to United alone. I think even Liverpool, City might be guilty of this. I'm almost thinking that there's almost this feeling that that teams will not play through you, or teams will not play around you. That if you're Manchester City, or if you're Liverpool, or if you're Manchester United, teams will try to break you down as opposed to just play that ball over. You could call it arrogance, where they think that they're not going to be taken apart. Ayush, I don't know if you noticed this in the games that you've seen, not just Liverpool, but United, City. It almost, even City, Pep Guardiola came out and said, well, I didn't expect Leicester to put 10 men behind the ball and play the ball over the top, which is, that's totally fine for them to do it. I mean, it almost feels like there's an arrogance, isn't there, defensively, that we're not going to get, the only way they're going to score is if they try to play through us as opposed to try to play around us.
Definitely. I mean,
Ash will come to you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, because the defenders from Liverpool, they have so much space. I mean, Trent, Arnold or Robertson has so much space. I mean, Gomez also has space. Van Dijk also can track back easily. He even defended Adama Traore not so long ago. So definitely we are playing high line because our defenders have got pace. So definitely Klopp has that in his back of mind that we can track back if that long ball is played. But clearly we are struggling because we are trying to play the offside trap. So the players are static when the ball is played, and the striker is having a momentum to run behind you. So that split seconds is creating that space for the striker and one-on-ones, and Adrian is definitely not Alisson caliber. So
I was going to make that point about Adrian. The one underrated thing about Alisson is that he oftentimes when the shots comes, he catches them. He doesn't palm them away.
Yes.
He catches them. That is such an underrated thing, because when you catch it, you basically stop the attack right there, right? You're not wasting for second balls. But one thing about the high line, though, it's kind of pointless playing a high line if you're playing on the halfway line. I think most of the highlights are going on the halfway. It's pointless playing a high line if you're going to be at the halfway line. You're not going to catch them offside there. But Akash, you had a point to make on that.
Yeah, so I was going to say that, certain teams have their game plan as to how to play against a big team. So I think those days are gone where you complain about that team is just parking the bus and hoofing the ball above the defenders, because, the football has evolved, and if you get like 70-80% of ball, there's basically nothing for the opposition to do just to maintain their shape and look for a mistake in the opposition team. So I don't think the manager should be complaining about that thing anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also now becoming more and more a game of transitions. A lot of people talk about Bayern's highland, but where they excel is transition. They know how to win the ball high up the field and then quickly to counter. Like, that's the way it works. And the one team that doesn't do it is Manchester United. They have no pressing. There were 3 players who do not press at all. And that's why no wonder they struggle to break things down, because they barely ever transition in play. But I think that's one thing. But I mean, there's a lot more to unpack. I think both teams had a pretty poor game defensively. I think both teams were very bad. I think we can agree on that. The only difference is that the one team that loses 7-2 probably had the worst. I don't know. For me, I think probably Liverpool losing 7-2 is a bigger disaster, because they conceded more goals and it was against Aston Villa or not.
Because they're champions. That's why.
Yeah, I would say that. But there's not going to be any hysteria. The players. Yeah. It will be a bit of a shock, but they'll come back from it. There's no talk about Jurgen out, buy of 100 million pounds worth of players. There's nothing on that sort. Whereas you see what's happening with Manchester United, I think it's not a shock. It's something that we all many of us expected. Maybe not 6-1, but we knew that there was something coming. And there's a lot of hysteria. I think there's a lot of angry people who are probably. I think Edward would probably be saying thank you to Klopp right now, that thank God you guys lost, so at least you got a little bit of pressure off us. But I mean, okay, let's just talk a little bit about a few other things. And then we're running out of time. Are you choosing your man of the match for Liverpool, Aston Villa? Who's your man of the match?
From Liverpool side?
No, anyone. Both sides. Who do you think is the man of the match of the game?
Definitely, it's a tie between Grealish and Watkins, their new striker. And Barkley also can lay a claim. I mean, there was such a shocking performance for Liverpool and such great performance from Aston Villa. I mean, even their defense was also nice. Tyron Woodley was, I don't know what his name is. I mean, he was also good.
Mings?
So, Mings, yes, Mings. And so it was great performance. Martinez was also great. I mean, he pulled off 2 or 3 great saves and kept Aston Villa in the game. I mean, we could have equalized also. Back then, luck would have been on our side. If we would have got some deflected goals, who knows, the scoreline would have been different. But overall, I mean, yeah. Man of the match for Grealish. I would go for Grealish.
Okay, that's good. Awesome. Akash, Manchester United against Tottenham. Who do you think was the man of the match? Was it Harry Kane? Was it Heung-min Son? Or was it Harry Maguire for Tottenham? he got the assist for them, didn't he? So, no, seriously, who do you think was your man of the match for that game?
My man of the match was Harry Kane. He acted like a leader. He, led the team from the front. He dropped back, caught the ball, and let Son create the space on the flanks, and he literally destroyed Harry Maguire and Aaron Wan-Bissaka from the left. So yeah, Harry Kane.
Yeah, and he played like a quarterback, almost like a number 10. I know
exactly.
Quarterback in the NFL, but
I think that was the strategy for Mourinho. I mean, because you have seen the previous Spurs games that Harry Kane was creating a lot of goals for Son. So with Son being fit, I think Harry Kane did the job well.
Yeah. I think in some ways, I think Jose exposed a few of the players. I think this was like a revenge mission for him. I think we have not spoken a lot about Tottenham because we've spoken a lot about Liverpool and United. But I think what's lost is how Jose knew exactly what he wanted to do. He knew exactly what Pogba's weaknesses were. He knew exactly what everybody how the team was going to play. And yeah, he's capable of these kind of performances from from time to time. And this is his second season, so we should expect big. I still think Tottenham will not make top 4. But I think they will get very close, or they will win the Europa. I think they'll make that decision when they get.
It depends on Gareth Bale. I mean, if he clicks, then they are making top 4 for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I still think Arsenal probably have a better chance. I'm assuming that. I mean, it's between Arsenal, Chelsea, and Spurs for those last 2 spots, and then you got to add Everton and Leicester now. So I think you got to add those 5 teams. Manchester United are not in it. I mean, let's not even kid ourselves. They're not in that. Yeah, I mean, on the basis, at this point, I think even if they bring in the players, unless they bring in Jadon Sancho or a proper right winger, there might be some hope, but I honestly don't see it.
Right now,
those 5
I don't think so.
Yeah, but I think Leicester. I'll put Leicester, maybe not, but definitely Everton.
Even Wolves are in the mix. So
yeah, well, they've been a bit inconsistent though. They've lost 2 games of their last 3 or 4.
Even Leicester lost to West Ham today. I guess 3-0 or something.
Tonight. Yes, that was the first. So I'm saying Leicester, I'm not sure yet.
So it's a mixed start for them. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say that but definitely those 4: Spurs, Arsenal, Everton, and Chelsea. I think they will be competing for those last 2 spots. I think Liverpool and City I don't know who's going to win the league. I mean, City
After 7-2 defeat, you don't put assess.
Well, City got a point now, and they gained a point on Liverpool. They shouldn't have, but they now gained a point on Liverpool. I mean, actually, it's an unbelievable season. But this is going to be interesting. The show used to be called. So I guess we'll talk about the big winners for tonight, and I think the biggest winners was Everton. For me, I think because now they're now top of the league, and they now know that if they get a draw against Liverpool in the next game, they're going to be top of the league for another week. And I think they're looking they're sitting very, very pretty right now. That Merseyside derby, who expected the Merseyside derby to be an early title battle? That's going to be interesting. And then I think the second biggest winners are Arsenal, not only because they won today, which was a great win, but now they can say that they're going to that their Invincibles record is safe for another year now. Unless Everton go on, unless it's Everton, but Everton, Aston Villa, both of them. But I think they can say now that the Invincibles record is safe for another year. But that's interesting. Ayush, my last question for you, because this show used to be called Football Humor, so we used to try to bring humor. And I think we saw two LOL moments today. I was laughing. I mean, I've never seen this. Okay, so which do you think was a more funnier moment? Was it Maguire tackling Shaw? Which I can Maguire tackling Shaw. Out of all the others that he does, he tackles Shaw. Is that, or was it? I don't know if you saw Ollie Watkins hitting the shot on the post. I don't know if you saw where Adrian was at that point. Adrian was outside of the goal.
I saw that.
Man.
Jamie Carragher was laughing at that. I mean, Jamie Carragher was laughing at that. What do you think was I thought, I mean, I'm a United fan, so for me, the Adrian thing was more funny. I was laughing for about 3 hours after that. I mean, what was he trying to do? But what do you
That
think?
was like a glitch in FIFA. It wasn't like a glitch in FIFA. The player is doing something.
But what do you think? Which one do you think was funnier? Was it Harry Maguire or was it Adrian?
Definitely a Maguire for me. I mean,
there
were three mistakes. There were 3 mistakes in that.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Actually, the funnier part was Luke Shaw complaining for a foul.
Yeah, no, but he was fouled. That was fouled. His back was turned, so he didn't know. He didn't know Maguire fouled him. He was fouled.
I mean, yeah.
No. I think Luke Shaw was fine because his back was turned. He didn't know who tackled him. But he later on realized it was Maguire who tackled him.
Yeah, that's what.
That was funny.
Like for us spectators, it was a funny moment because, Maguire was pulling him back and he was complaining for a foul to, for the ref to check for VAR. So that's comedy.
I know. It was just fun. Yeah, no, both of them. Seriously, I think it's fun today in terms of what we've seen. But we now have 2 weeks to digest all of this because we have no games next week. The international break is on. One thing to note is that probably two of the worst performers today were Harry Maguire and Joe Gomez. And they're probably going to be England's first centre-half pairing, I think. England, they might be thinking they had a problem at CDM, but I think they're going to have a problem at centre-half because who's coming next is John Stones. So,
God save the Queen.
So I have no idea what they're going to. I have no idea what's going to happen with England. I think Gareth Southgate will probably be going back and thinking, like, what am I supposed to do here? Who's coming through? But that's an issue. That's an issue for England to solve, and we'll see what they do. But thank you so much, Akash. Thank you so much, Ayush, for joining me. I know it's been a tough half and then a good half. So it's like so it's a bit of mixed emotions. But yeah, it's been a strange day of football. But thank you so much, Ayush, for joining. Thank you so much, Ayush, Akash. Always a pleasure to have you guys on the show.
Thanks for easing the pain. For sharing the pain.
Yes, well, we're all feeling it. We're all feeling that pain. It's a strange season, but I think at some point we're going to have to start doing Everton match reactions at the rate that they're going because we normally do that, but we probably going to have to start doing that. But guys, if you enjoyed that video and if we have succeeded in lessening your pain a little bit, please do remember to like and share this video. We appreciate that. And also remember to subscribe if you're new. Bottom right hand corner, as we said, we want to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube. So please help us reach that number. We're at 90 right now. So if you can subscribe to the channel, we can keep producing great content. And that would be really, really appreciated. Also, as I said, we're going to have a transfer reaction video tomorrow after deadline day. So, after the deadline passes. So we're going to do it on deadline day. Tomorrow is deadline day for most transfers. There'll still be a few days for the Premier League to EFL, but the big deals will probably happen tomorrow. Will be the last day. So please remember to subscribe so you can get notifications for that. We'll be providing reaction on that tomorrow. So please do join us, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening. Enjoy what's left of the weekend. I know, and we'll see you again. Have a good weekend. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to that episode of Late Night Football. We need your help to grow this channel, so if you've been enjoying the show thus far, please do like and subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends, family, colleagues, neighbors, drinking buddies, fellow football fans, and anybody else you know or don't know. We'd really appreciate it. Please also follow us on Twitter and Facebook via the links in the description below and spread the word about us. Take care.